Okay, guys, so before we push to the end, to the beating this game, I wanted to do another codex session because we've got a lot of codexes to go over. So let's start with we've got quite a number of new codex things. So let's go with
In the
aliens,
early 2160s,
races,
the Alliance began aggressive
the
hovering
Reaper's
tanks.
indoctrination.
Reaper indoctrination is an insidious means of corrupting organic minds, reprogramming the brain through physical and psychological conditioning, using electromagnetic fields, infrasonic and ultrasonic noise, and other subliminal methods. The Reaper's resulting control over the limbic system leaves the victim highly susceptible to its suggestions. Organics undergoing indoctrination may complain of headaches and buzzing or ringing in their ears. As time passes, they have feelings of being watched and hallucinations of ghostly presences. Ultimately, the Reaper gains the ability to use the victim's body to amplify its signals, manifesting as alien voices in the mind. Indoctrination can create perfect deep cover agents. A Reaper's suggestions can manipulate victims into betraying friends, trusting enemies, or viewing the Reaper itself with superstitious awe. Should a Reaper subvert a well-placed political or military leader, the resulting chaos can bring down nations. Long-term physical effects of the manipulation are unsustainable. Higher mental functioning decays, ultimately leaving the victim a gibbering animal.
Wow.
Rapid indoctrination is possible, but causes this decay in days or weeks. Slow, patient indoctrination allows the thrall to last for months or years.
See, that's what's dangerous about them is it's subtle at first, and then it kind of just ramps up casually. It can, and that's when it becomes more dangerous.
The flagship of the rogue X-Spectre, Sarin Arterius. Sovereign is a devastating dreadnought of unprecedented power. At 2 kilometers long, Sovereign was believed to have been powered by a gigantic Element Zero core, the only energy source potent enough to land the massive vessel on a planet. During the Eden Prime War, the ship unleashed its peerless destructive force against which Citadel Council ships were defenseless. With a virtually indestructible flagship and a crew of fanatic Geth and Krogan, Sarin nearly succeeded in wiping out all his enemies. Only the resourcefulness and bravery of the commander and crew of the SSV Normandy stopped him.
That's right.
The overwhelming power of Sovereign ignited bizarre speculation in tabloid media that the vessel was sent by extragalactic invaders, or was, despite indeterminate photographic evidence at best, a single giant robot. Some sources even claimed that Sovereign was alive. Such conjecture, however baseless, remains to this day.
Yeah, well...
Although they...
Alright, whoa.
In the early 21s...
Alright, let's go to planets and locations.
Humans detected Iaea as an Earth-type. Before the Geth revolt 300 years ago, the Quarians colonized Haestrom to study the mysterious instability of its sun, which threatened premature eruption into a red giant. As a scientific outpost of minimal military value, Haestrom was ill-equipped to repel Geth forces during the insurrection and fell quickly under their control. Captured Geth planetary survey data indicates that despite sustaining damage during the war, Haestrom's architecture remains as it was 300 years ago.
That's not what it was written.
Preserving a Quarian architectural style that no longer exists anywhere else in the galaxy. Because Haestrom's sun has overwhelmed the planet's protective magnetosphere, humans foolhardy enough to venture into Geth-controlled Haestrom must exercise extreme caution. Minutes of radiation exposure will overload shields, and hours of exposure will kill. Furthermore, solar output renders surface-to-orbit communication nearly impossible.
It seemed like it would be killing me within seconds, not hours of exposure.
A regional hub of Asari commerce awash in riches, Ilium is infamous for its abusive labor practices and legalization of nearly everything except murder. As such, Ilium is the preferred production site for weapons and pharmaceuticals that would be illegal nearly everywhere else, made even more lucrative by legal indentured servitude. Among the biotics-related pharmaceutical producers is the Dantius Corporation, a rising star in galactic commerce. Despite the dangers of its products, Ilium is renowned for glamour, luxury, and safety, provided by near-total surveillance, making it a favored tourist destination. Countless celebrities maintain palatial estates on Ilium and in its capital Nos Astra. The sole obstacle to business on Ilium is its extensive bureaucracy, tolerated only for its provision of security. Regardless of the character of its economy, Ilium's self-congratulatory media exalts its own society with the provincial arrogance of new money, glorifying in sexiest CEOs and 10 richest residents lists. Choked by the hypergrowth of non-native plant species, Pragia serves as a galactic reminder about the imperative for careful regulation during colonization. 2 centuries ago, Batarian agribusiness chose uninhabited Pragia as their empire's breadbasket. Colonization authorities introduced non-native, industrially mutated plants that flourished in the world's fertile volcanic soil. Synergizing with Pragia's natural geothermal conditions and chemotropic microbes, the imported species soon became a nightmare. Mutant strains of poisonous and even carnivorous plants arose, overgrowing colonies in days instead of years, and causing the Batarians to abandon their holdings. Because the planet's small animal population is insufficient to check its plant growth, Alliance ecologists predict soil exhaustion in 400 years. Due to its relative isolation and lack of population, Pragia has become a regional haven for drug runners, weapons smugglers, pirates, mercenaries, terrorists, and intelligence agents seeking secrecy. The Drell homeworld of Rakana once teemed with life, its arid plains home to spectacular insect and reptile analogs. But the Drell took to industrialization early and did not realize the extent of the environmental damage they caused until it was too late. With their topsoil depleted and oceans too acidic to sustain life, the Drell were situated for a massive population crash by 2025 CE. It was then the Hanar stepped in, mounting a large-scale rescue operation to bring Drell to the Hanar homeworld, Kajay. As wars erupted over what resources remained on Rakana and billions began to die, approximately 375,000 Drell escaped in the Exodus. To repay their debt, the Drell entered into an agreement with the Hanar. Called the Compact, it states that the Drell would assist the Hanar with tasks the Hanar cannot physically perform. Today, high-ranking Hanar are frequently inseparable from their Drell attendants. As vast in natural beauty as it is in threat, the purple and gold nebula called the Perseus Veil forms the natural border between Geth space and the Terminus systems. The Veil's total opacity prevents Council intelligence from surveying Geth activity. Theoretically, the Geth could be preparing a devastating attack against which the Council could be defenseless, or the Geth could have died out, so that the defense budget against them could be gaining the Alliance nothing but economic ruination. Despite fears of Geth, prospectors do occasionally mount salvage ventures inside the Veil. One ended in tragedy. Using technomental domination, the Geth drew the team into the Veil before aiming them back as husks at the organic society that produced them. A leak-classified Spectre report claims that the Dreadnought Sovereign, commanded by ex-Spectre Saran Arterius and crewed by Geth, hid near the Veil before initiating the 2183 Citadel attack. The Krogan homeworld boasts extreme temperatures, virulent diseases, and vicious predatory fauna. Around 1900 BCE, the Krogan discovered atomic power and promptly instigated many intraplanetary wars, sending Tuchanka into a nuclear winter. With most of their industrial base destroyed, the Krogan entered a new dark age, and warring tribal bands dominated. Populations remained low for the next 2,000 years. First contact with the Solarians made resurgence possible.
Resurgence?
Krogan brought to less hostile planets bred exponentially and returned to reconquer their home. They built vast underground shelters to shield themselves from surface radiation, which proved prescient during the Krogan rebellions, when many of them isolated themselves in a vain attempt to avoid the genophage. Convinced they could outbreed the genophage, they transmitted it into more than 90% of the sealed bunkers. Today, Tuchanka's population is sharply limited, and while individual Krogan are long-lived, the genophage ensures few replacements.
Yeah.
Asari Cyclonic Barrier Technology, CBT, attempts to solve the higher-end limitations of traditional kinetic barriers. Traditional barriers cannot block high-level kinetic energy such as disruptor torpedoes because torpedo mass effect fields add mass. The CBT violently slaps aside rather than halting incoming linear force. By rotationally firing their mass effect field projectors, ships create rapidly oscillating kinetic barriers instead of static ones. Shooting through the CBT is like trying to shoot at a target inside a spinning ball. Significant drawbacks to current CBT configuration prevent its use on anything other than frigates and fighters. Its many high-frequency sensors and emitters require frequent maintenance and replacement. A partially damaged CBT can endanger its operator, who is surrounded by rotating mass effect fields skewing in unpredictable directions. However, if an emitter is damaged, the CBT becomes a traditional shield array, making it effective during opening volleys. The collector's particle, still in its experimental stages, the M622 Avalanche generates a Bose-Einstein condensate within a mass effect bubble, which dissipates on impact, violently spraying the condensate outward and coating the target in a near-absolute zero superfluid. The Avalanche is unreliable, at times merely coating its target with ice, defacing exposed skin and freezing armor joints. Such low temperatures cause great damage to electronics like kinetic barrier emitters, which sometimes leads to total systems failure. At the other extreme, the Avalanche freezes flesh and bone, causing massive trauma as blood vessels constrict and frozen blood expands. Occasionally, such iced tissue shatters.
Yes, love that. Love it when it shatters. Alright. Let's take a look at these. I don't think that we got to the Ardat Yakshi. The Ardat Yakshi, Demon of the Night Winds, are Asari suffering from a genetic disorder preventing conventional melding of nervous systems during mating. Instead, Ardat Yakshi electrochemically ravage their partners' nervous systems, in extreme cases leaving victims as vegetative invalids or corpses. Asari psychologists regard this incapacity for mental fusion as preventing the development of empathy, leading to psychopathy. There is no known cure. The disorder generally begins in infancy, reaching full pathology during maiden adolescent sexual development. While seductive and sexually driven as other Asari, Ardat Yakshi are congenitally sterile. Ancient Asari mythology held Ardat Yakshi as gods of destruction, depicting them as villains of countless legends and as the anti-heroes of numerous Asari epics. Contrary to popular belief, Ardat Yakshi are neither extremely rare, around 1% of Asari dwell on the AY spectrum, nor are they all murderers. Most cultivate and discard countless exploitative or abusive relationships during their legally marginal lives. Despite rumors of Ardat Yakshi syndicates, by nature Ardat Yakshi are incapable of long-term cooperation. As a disproportionately wealthy species, Asari employ their economic reach and media ownership to hide the AY pathology from the galactic community, placing most Ardat Yakshi in monitored work programs or seclusion. Only the most aggressive cases are sentenced to sanitaria and prisons or to the execution lists of justicars. Asari justicars. Despite the refinement and sophistication of Asari culture, criminality remains a fact of life. The Asari solution to the most vicious and destructive criminal element is the Justicar order. Justicars are an Asari class of virtually untouchable extrajudicial executioners, operating almost exclusively within Asari territory. In the last decade alone, Justicars have smashed dozens of criminal rings inside Asari territory, operated by Asari and non-Asari alike. Their methods range from subtle, where possible, to brutal, where necessary. Trained for extreme strength, biotic capacity, resourcefulness, asceticism, and ruthlessness, the fanatical Justicars are romanticized and feared throughout Asari society. Although Justicars generally work alone, their effectiveness arises from the huge body of knowledge they can access. Any Asari who enters the ranks of Justicars has already spent centuries in a combination of criminal investigation, military intelligence, and combat experience. The collective body of Justicar knowledge exceeds even that of the Spectres. Justicars tend to be independent, requiring a little help, but also scorning it since such advanced skill and experience usually travel to the powerful ego. The conflicts presented by such arrogance prompted the Justicar Order to develop the Oaths of Subsumation. The Oaths pledge protection of the innocent, the punishment of the guilty, and defense of common law and the norms of Asari society. The norms of Asari society, eh? The effect that can be a little bit dangerous. The effect of the Oaths is conservative, ensuring that Justicars respect the existing distribution of Asari power rather than staging a coup to rearrange society according to Justicar satisfaction. Nevertheless, the possibility of such an attack is a source of anxiety and counterintelligence among the Asari elite. Of all the pledges, the third oath of subsumation is sworn the least of any of the oaths, requiring a Justicar to swear loyalty that overrides the dictates of even the Justicar code. The third oath is usually invoked in matters where even the black or white thinking of Justicars is forced to concede the existence of gray. That is super interesting. The Drell. Biology. Drell are omnivorous, reptile-like humanoids with an average lifespan of 85 galactic standard years. They give live birth to their young, who are capable of eating solid food from the moment they are born. Drell appearance is very similar to Asari in humans, but their muscle tissue is slightly denser than that of humans, giving them a wiry strength. Many of their more reptilian features are concealed, like a three-chambered heart with a muscular ridge that is capable of shunting oxygenated or deoxygenated blood as needed. One unique characteristic, however, is the hyoid bone in their throats, which allows them to inflate their throats and produce vocal sounds outside of the human range. Would-be assassins have noted that these two features make Drell extremely hard to strangle or suffocate. Because the Drell ancestors emerged from arid, rocky deserts, the humid ocean-covered Hanar homeworld of Kaji proved tolerable only when the Drell stayed inside a climate-controlled dome city. Due to this huge disparity in the two species' homeworld environments, the leading cause of death among Drells on Kaji is a bacterial lung disease called Temporal Syndrome. With the generation of the Drell's arrival on the planet, the disease has become resistant to Hanar antibiotics and other advanced treatments. Once an infection settles in, death is slow but imminent. Transplants may buy time, but as the infection spreads to other major organs, there comes a point of diminishing returns and eventual system failure. 8 centuries ago, the already arid Drell homeworld, Rakhana, began its swift descent into lifelessness due to a disastrous industrial expansion. Because their population was bursting at 11 billion, and they did not possess interstellar flight capacity, the Drell would have been doomed without the intervention of the Hanar. Following first contact, the Hanar spent 10 years transporting 375,000 willing Drell to their own homeworld, Kaji. The remaining billions perished in the dying world, warring against each other for diminishing sources of water and food. Today, only a few thousand survive on Rakhana in clusters, never exceeding a few hundred. Now a cemetery world, Rakhana's population can double during pilgrimage season. Wow! Drell have been part of the galactic community for almost 2 centuries. Most reside on Kaji, content to coexist with the Hanar. Those who leave Kaji tend to be adventurers, gifted by the Hanar with acute perception of interspecies body language. Solitary Drell travelers often seek out new species elsewhere, adopting that species' culture and rarely returning to Kaji. Such Drell number in the thousands and are scattered across the galaxy, tending towards quiet integrated lives. On Kaji, the Hanar afforded the Drell every opportunity to thrive. While outsiders and even some Hanar regard the Drell as junior partners, if not actual servants, Drell have integrated themselves into every level of Hanar society as respected, productive citizens. Geth heretics. Conversations with the Geth, programs dubbed Legion, have brought to light a profound schism in Geth society. When Saren Arterius approached the Geth in the Dreadnought Sovereign, some of them chose to follow him. Most did not. Saren's followers were allowed to leave Geth society but were dubbed heretics by those that remained. This revelation implies several things. First, the majority of Geth chose not to attack organic society. Second, the Geth forces the Council and Alliance fleets have battled the last 2 years represent only a small portion of their actual military and economic power, perhaps as little as 5% of mainstream Geth society. Third, so we only killed like 5% of their population. Only 5%? Psh, that's not a big number. Psh. Third, this schism suggests that individual Geth possess more free will and perhaps even personality than previously suspected. Without such individuality, no Geth could have deviated from the group decision to join or reject Saren's mission. There could not have been a division. Finally, there is a matter of Legion's word choice. The Geth used the English word heretics to describe Saren's followers. One of the many words Legion could have chosen, nonconformists, dissenters, rebels, etc., only the word heretic suggests a broadly accepted Geth philosophy or religion, and that the actions of Saren's allies violated the orthodoxy. I'm curious to find out if this part about the Geth's heretics was already planned out in the first Mass Effect, or if they, decided, oh yeah, by the way, all of those Geth that you were fighting, only like 5% of them were actually representative of the entire Geth as a whole. The vast majority of the Geth population did not agree with Saren, did not join him. I'm wondering if that was something that they decided later. Cerberus Project Overlord. Planet 8. 2 beautiful moons, 1 spectacular ring, 0 neighbors, says a popular advertisement for this Terminus Systems world. Aite is known for its sparsely settled population, despite being a garden planet with a colony nearly a century old. Blessed with a mild climate, wildlife no more dangerous than that on Earth, and soil and bacteria amenable to imported plants, Aite would appear to be an exploited paradise. However, it is unpopular for 2 reasons. The first and most obvious is that its moon, Litai, is an unstable orbit that will lead to a planetary impact and an extinction-level event within the 2 centuries. As such, all investment in the planet is short-term, and the biggest business is selling off the local biota to the highest bidder. The second drawback is the level of violence on the planet. Like the rest of the Phoenix massing cluster, Aite was briefly considered part of its Citadel space. Ooh, sorry about that. We've got some lightning storms, apparently. During its first wave of colonization. However, when the colony broke off to become an independent planet in 2133, the Council let the doomed planet go with less than a day of debate. Free from any real governing body, Aite's history has since been filled with wars between small frontier town city-states over its resources. The result is a dangerous world where the average citizen is expected to be self-reliant to the point of fending for themselves against cutthroat corporations, strong-arm militia groups, and even Geth incursions. The fighting is so frequent that the name of the planet itself is changed more than 11 times. In a sign of blunt indifference, standard Citadel galaxy maps refer to the world by the name given to it by human colonists in the latter half of the century. Planets and locations. The Migrant Fleet. The flotilla, or the Migrant Fleet, is a fleet of roughly 50,000 starships that houses over 17 million Quarians. The largest collection of starfaring vessels in the galaxy, the fleet is so large, it takes days for all the ships to pass through a mass relay. Wow. The ships are constantly repaired, replaced, and upgraded to comfortably house as many Quarians as possible. Typically, ships specializes in roles for the fleet, from the enormous agricultural live ships to the shielded lab ships, to the repurposed freighters known as home ships that house Quarian children, young parents, and educators. Employed Quarians typically live in the ship they work on, since commuting from ship to ship ties up resources with unnecessary docking procedures. Even within the flotilla, Quarians on most ships will remain encased in their protective suits. Rarely, Quarians will meet on clean ships for specific purposes such as medical services or reproduction. When this occurs, they remove their suits, knowing full well that it is likely they will spend a few days having allergic reactions or getting over infections as their weakened immune systems compensate for each other's presence. The A61 Mantis Gunship. The workhorse of mercenary bands throughout the galaxy, the Mantis is a two-man, vector-thrust aircraft that excels in close air support roles. Highly modular in construction, the Mantis can be reconfigured as a low-altitude gunship, a fighter, a high-altitude bomber, or even a single-stage-to-orbit spaceplane that can engage enemy craft around a planet or space station. The only role the Mantis cannot perform is that of a true deep space fighter, as it has no FTL drive. First rolled off of the assembly lines in 2170, the Mantis remains in service in dozens of armies across the galaxy. It is most commonly used as air support in pitched ground battles in a configuration that sports two pods for Inferno PKRs, precision kill rockets, and a chin-mounted M350 mass accelerator cannon. Its kinetic barriers, thermal decoy system, and electronic countermeasures suite makes the Mantis far less vulnerable to surface-to-air attacks than previous generations of aircraft. Like most modern planes, the Mantis uses an empty zero core to ease the load of the engines with a mass effect field, allowing it to take off vertically or hover in place using a minimum fuel. This also gives it far greater range and speed than the helicopters and jump jet aircraft that once filled its niche. A Mantis can take off from Baton Rouge, reach Moscow in a few hours, fly a ground attack mission, and return home before having to refuel. Helios thruster module. Intended for next-generation craft, the Heed Industries Helios thruster module propulsion system far outplaces the typical liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen reactions that power a frigate's maneuvering thrusters. By using metastable metallic hydrogen, the Helios boosts a fuel that burns at far greater efficiency than liquid H2O2. Navigators can execute the numerous small course corrections inherent to any long-distance travel without fear of exhausting the ship's fuel supplies. This net gain extends to forward impulse as well. A ship powered by antiprotons can coast temporarily, using the Helios to reach an inferior but highly sustainable speed. Such efficiency lowers antiproton consumption, a constant concern of any warship. When a Helios-propelled ship must refuel, however, it typically relies on a large carrier or nearby planetary factory to synthesize the metallic hydrogen. This process uses extremely dense mass effect fields to create the metal under pressure of over 1 million Earth atmospheres, an activity most safely done while planetside. While that process may seem like a drawback compared to skimmer ships that can gather hydrogen and oxygen from anywhere in the universe, the combat superiority of the Helios' maneuvering capabilities is often a worthwhile trade-off. The same efficiency that allows for micro-burn course correction can power rapid bursts of motion. Once a pilot becomes used to the ship's new energetic responses, she can easily put the ship wherever and at whatever angle she desires. Starships. Quarian live ships. There are few wide-open spaces in Quarian spacecrafts. Live ships are the exception. Each ship is a massive hydroponics facility, growing thousands of tons of genetically modified staple crops under artificial light and in highly enriched soil. The surface of a live ship is studded with docking bays, so as many shuttles as possible can distribute the food throughout the flotilla on a daily basis. When received, the crops are sterilized with radiation, ground up into nutritious pastes, and pumped into Quarian suits through feeding tubes. In return, waste products that could be used as fertilizer or compost are returned to the live ships through an efficient, if odorous, recycling program. Wow! They're literally, I mean, that makes sense, using their own feces to, that makes a lot of sense. Live ships do not hold animals. The Quarians consume a vegan diet. Oh, I did not realize that they were vegan. Driven not by ethics but by practicality. Captive animals require living space and consume large amounts of water and plant matter. The Quarians cannot afford such an inefficient resource to calorie ratio, to say nothing of a live animal's disease or allergen potential. As a result, when the flotilla arrives in a star system, where life is based on the same dextroamino acids that the Quarians consume, pastes based on animal proteins fetch highly inflated prices, and the vendors are typically mobbed by Quarians wanting a new taste sensation. The sickness that often follows these binges is treated much the same way as hangovers are in human culture. Oh, interesting. Painful, but part of the overall experience of excess. That's pretty interesting. As a foodie, I would be upset to be a Quarian, but I guess I wouldn't know any better. Disruptor torpedoes are powered projectiles with warheads that create random, unstable Mass Effect fields when triggered. These field warp spacetime in localized areas. The rapid asymmetrical mass changes cause the target to rip itself apart. In flight, torpedoes use a mass-increasing field, making them too huge for an enemy kinetic barriers to repel. Because extra mass retards acceleration, torpedoes are easy prey for defensive guarding weapons and must therefore be launched at extremely close range to be effective. To prevent damage to the parent craft, torpedoes must be cold launched, meaning they are released before their thrusters ignite. Aligning with its target's trajectory, a fighter releases a torpedo and immediately thrusts away, while the torpedo continues to coast towards its target. That's interesting. After the fighter is clear, no more than a second after launch, the torpedo activates its mass field and thrusters away from the fighter and towards its target. Torpedoes are the main anti-ship weapon used by fighters. Launched at point-blank range in ripple fire waves, they are reminiscent of the ancient Calliope rocket artillery launchers, thus their popular nickname, Callies. By saturating defensive guardian systems with multiple targets, at least a few torpedoes will get through. The Javelin. The Javelin is an experimental close assault weapon fitted on a handful of newer Alliance warships. It consists of a rack of 2 or more disposable disruptor torpedo tubes bolted or magnetically slung onto the exteriors of a ship's armored hull. Fired on converging trajectories, the torpedoes detonate in a precisely timed sequence that allows the warhead's dark energy to resonate and thereby magnify the resulting space-time warp effects. Like fighter-launched torpedoes, Javelins are cold-launched for safety reasons, though they use a different approach. Resembling old-fashioned submarine torpedo tubes, Javelin torpedoes come packed individual sealed tubes filled with compressed inert gas. Opening the front of the tube causes escaping gases to push the torpedo into the vacuum, releasing a puff of crystals around the mouth of the tube. After completely clearing the tube, the torpedo ignites its thrusters. It's really interesting how much science, like the writers, really put into this lore. Javelin mounts are most often fitted on swift frigates, which enter knife-fight torpedo ranges as a matter of course. Javelins may also be fitted on heavier ships for short-range engagements such as trans-relay assaults. They are particularly useful in this role for dreadnoughts, which cannot lay their main guns on close-range targets. As missile weapons, Javelins are subject to highly accurate defensive guardian fire. They must be launched in large numbers and at short range to have any chance of hitting their targets at all. The Master Thief, Kasumi's Secrets. Gray boxes. A mnemonic neutral recall stimulator, also known as gray box, is a device implanted in the brain to assist and prioritize memory. Originally developed to slow the progression of Alzheimer's disease, gray boxes function by helping the amygdalae chunk incoming stimuli into recognizable pieces for memory consolidation. Each memory is assigned a shape or sensation from other memories, tying the concepts together into a block that is more easily recalled. When Synthetic Insights first released them onto the market in 2140, gray boxes were hailed as a way humans could level the playing field between themselves and the Solarians, whose natural eidetic memories gave them an advantage. However, because the implant procedure of a gray box requires the brain to irreversibly shift its workload over to the machine, software bugs or attempted removal of the gray box for maintenance purposes could lead to incapacitating brain damage. For this reason, gray boxes soon became used only by those with a dire need for photographic memories, such as researchers and spies. In 2175, sale and implantation of gray boxes were outlawed by the Systems Alliance following an incident with Abraham Rumoy, an employee of the Alliance Intelligence Agency. Rumoy was believed to be a professional conman and thief named Keiji Okuda, who accessed and sold classified data. However, prosecuting attorneys were unable to use his assisted memories as evidence due to the Alliance court system's prohibitions against self-incrimination based on the Fifth Amendment of the old U.S. Constitution. Rumoy soon disappeared off the map following his trial, further heightening suspicions that he was Okuda and living off ill-gotten gains. When found outside a human head, gray boxes are usually accessed with a specialized reader. A separate decryption key is almost always required, as users with data sensitive enough to require a gray box invariably install their own encryption. The Casa Fabrications Locust, the gun that killed 2 presidents, is the infamous legacy of the Casa Fabrications Model 12 Locust. Originally created for the Systems Alliance, who wanted a lightweight weapon for high-gravity worlds, the Locust was designed to overcome the limitations of traditional submachine guns at close range. With bullet velocity of modern weapons already pushed to the limit, the Locust designers sought a way to improve accuracy through reducing weapon kick. They created an internal floating bed that absorbs the gun's recoil with minimal jarring of the gun frame itself. The barrel, magazine, chamber, and operating mechanism all moves within this bed, which absorbs shock with springs and buffers. This creates a platform stable enough that the Locust can use auto-targeting software, usually reserved for match-grade weapons. That's really interesting. The Locust's lethality on shielded targets has been amply demonstrated. In 2176, a Virginian patent clerk named Michael Moser Lang brought a Locust concealed in a shoulder-mounted video camera to a photo opportunity between Enrique Aguilar, President of the United North American States, and Chinese People's Federation Premier Ying Xiong. At a distance about 25 meters, Lang pierced the kinetic barriers covering the stage with the first burst, and when Xiong heroically tackled Aguilar to remove him from the line of fire, Lang's succeeding burst went through the Premier's body and fatally wounded both men. Donovan Hawk's collection contains 2 antique ivory-handled Locusts, modified to take thermal clips. A detachable data drive rests in the lining of the box, containing OmniTool specifications for fabricating copies. A quick tip to the extranet reveals one of the weapons is the same serial number as Lang's original. If it's a fake, it's extremely well made. Lady Liberty. The Statue of Liberty was the target of several terrorist attacks over its 210-year lifetime, but in 2096, a motley group called Freedom's First finally brought the statue down. Wow! Protesting the induction of Canada and Mexico into the United North American States. Oh, the New York chapters of Freedom's First wanted a symbol that they would secede from this new union if necessary. Oh, I didn't realize that Canada and Mexico joined the United North American States. In the early morning hours of November 1st, they smuggled a small arms and 15.5 tons of highly explosive onto Liberty Island. Shooting or capturing the guards, they planted the explosives under the pedestal and detonated them at 7:37 a.m. The statue crashed to the ground in pieces, unexpectedly killing 4 of the Freedom First terrorists. The remaining team members were apprehended after long manhunts, but the damage was done. The outrage at the secessionists kindled the fires of the Second American Civil War. Oh wow, I didn't even know about any of this stuff. This is really cool, reading about, a future, hypothetical history. On November 4th, President Caitlin Chung, that actually sounds like a female Asian. Wow, we had finally a female Asian president, signed an executive order to rebuild the statue. Approximately 1/10 of the steel beams and copper plating from the destroyed statue was recovered and used in creating the new one. The original's head was put on display at the National Museum of American History in Washington, D.C. Hey, I know that place. A bunch of us went to that place, when the Dragon Age Season 2 Dragon Age Resurgence players came to visit me. We went to the Museum of Natural History. Oh, American History. National Museum of American History. Excuse me. Natural history is where he meant. Anyway, continuing on. It remained there for 2 years until the Battle of Washington. During heavy shelling by secessionist forces, the head disappeared. The new statue was completed in 2101, and the fate of the original pieces was left for speculation and pulp novels. Interests flared up briefly in 2159 when photos surfaced of the head in the cargo hold of a star freighter, but by that time, human media were far more concerned with the future. In the face of humanity spreading out among thousands of new planets, a statue titled Liberty Enlightening the World seemed small and quaint by comparison. Beckenstein. More glittering than diamonds, more expensive than surgery, is how travel agents describe this planet behind closed doors. Given the opportunity to colonize planets after the First Contact War, the Systems Alliance chose Beckenstein to be their trading arm, producing goods to be sold on the nearby Citadel. Cracking the vast galactic marketplace proved difficult. The first human product sold on novelty alone. Then lack of demand hit Beckenstein's economy hard. Only in the second generation of colonists did the planet find a sustainable niche in high-quality entertainment and luxury goods. Once brand awareness sunk in, aliens flocked to Bekenstein's many spaceports. The planet today boasts more millionaires and billionaires per capita than any other human colony. Though its crime tends to be white-collar and non-violent, Bekenstein is not without its dark side. Both its suicide rate and inflation are extremely high compared to other worlds. Unemployment is artificially low because few people immigrate to the expensive planet without having a job lined up. And the cost of living is so great that unemployed workers typically leave for kinder planets after just a few months. Those who stay see themselves as tougher, sharper, and more skillful than the rest, as well as capable of getting respect and employment on any lesser planet. As a popular song says, if you can make it on the Beck, you got 'em by the neck. The veteran Zaid's secrets. Firestorm. The M451 Firestorm flamethrower is a product of human ingenuity, ruthlessness, and industrial espionage. Its origin dates back to the 2160s when human colonists to new planets used flamethrowers to clear vegetation or ice. The fuels performed erratically on planets with extremely cold temperatures and differing air compositions from Earth. Realizing this could be a problem for military units, System Alliance intelligence operatives stole the Turian design for the High-Res flamethrower, a battle-tested workhorse that functioned in nearly every environment. The result was the Firestorm, an anti-personnel and anti-armor flame unit that can accept a variety of liquid fuels. The Turian design used low-octane hydrocarbons thickened with dentra oil, which is taken from large marine animals similar to Earth's whales. Humans then reverse-engineered a synthetic composite with almost identical properties that could be fabricated from heavy weapon fuel cells using an omni-tool. The result is a sticky spray that burns at approximately 1600 degrees Celsius, a less intense fire than plasma weapons but covering a significantly wider target area. Adding to the trauma is the choking smoke produced by the spray, and if the target's armor is breached, the fires quickly consume the oxygen within. The Firestorm may not be the most efficient weapon in the Systems Alliance arsenal, but the sheer ugliness of how it kills ensures it is the most feared. Mercenaries, Blue Sun's full history. Now here we are. Founded in 2160 by the human mercenaries Zaid Masani and Vidu Santiago, the Blue Suns were initially a Skillian Verge protection racket. As they expanded in numbers and influence, the two co-founders disagreed vehemently on many issues. Finally, after arguing about whether to recruit the slave-trading Batarians into their ranks, Vito ambushed Zaid and shot him in the head. Believing Zaid dead, Vito took full control of the Blue Suns and hired whatever Batarians it pleased. Soon, he had crowned one named Solem Dalsera as titular head of operations. It was a move designed to placate his Batarian investors and draw fire from would-be assassins. It worked on both counts, and the partnership has lasted to this day. Over the decades, the Suns grew into a fearsome combat force spanning dozens of planets in Citadel space, the Verge, and the Terminus systems. Knowing that a good logistical team is key to fielding an army, Vito diversified the Suns, selling arms, trading, and supplies as often as taking contracts to crack skulls. Even when the Suns suffered heavy losses, Vito's entrepreneurial expertise ensured new recruits could replace the old. All that was lost was the truth. Today, only a handful of trusted mercs even know who Vito Santiago is, let alone his partner, Zaid. And last but not least, Planet Zoria. Bring firearms and antihistamines is what veteran guides say about this lush garden world. First colonized in 2160, Zoria's temperature and tropical zones are overrun with plants and fungi of all kinds. As a result, the air in most habitable areas is choked with pollen and spores that range from benign to deadly. The scattered colonies across the planet have resorted to clear-cutting and slash-and-burn farming to create habitable zones, and the more rural areas where the spores are thickest are populated only by Vorcha. Lax ecological laws allow mining and manufacturing industries to flourish and pollute cheaply, as the planet's carrying capacity far outstrips the current size of its colonies. Zoria is also home to the Blue Suns Mercenary Company, who dominate the colony's security forces. The Suns enjoy nearly unlimited influence with local politicians and judges, ensuring no other private military contractors can compete with them economically. Nearly every colony has a Suns recruiting station, if not a training camp, though this has hardly made the planet any safer. Piracy, drugs, and vice, and political violence are commonplace. Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for sticking around and, listening to all of these codexes. In the next video, we're gonna start beating this game. Can you believe it? So until then, everybody, love yourselves and love each other.